Welcome to The Source, where we combine the headlines with in-depth conversations with the newsmakers themselves. Today on the program, a closure in one of the darkest chapters in Philippine American history.
We should expect all three bells from Balangiga back in the Philippines.
After more than a century, the bells of Balangiga are finally returning home.
On December 11th, the Balangiga bells will arrive in Villamor Air Base.
Also, closer ties between the Philippines and China.
President Xi's visit gives us new impetus of our mutual efforts to enhance collaboration.
But can the country be friends with both America and the East Asian giant? Philippine Ambassador to the United States, Jose Babe Romualdez, joins us in the program. And later, a man gives honor to his father with a 44-year-old Christmas tree. That's for today's In Focus.
This program is brought to you by Bank of Commerce, an affiliate of San Miguel Corporation.
Thank you for joining us. I'm Pinky Webb. It's official. The Balangiga bells are finally returning to the Philippines after more than a century in the hands of the United States. In a joint meeting, Defense Secretary Delfin Lorenzana says the bells would arrive in the country on December 11th. He adds he suggested to President Duterte that the bells be turned over to the Balangiga Church on December 15th. The U.S. turned over 2 bells last November 15 at the Warren Air Force Base in Wyoming. Another bell is at the U.S. military facility in South Korea. U.S. troops seized them as war trophies after a massacre in Balangiga, Eastern Samar during the Filipino-American War. Let's go straight to the source of the story. Philippine Ambassador to the United States, Jose Manuel Babe Romualdez. Ambassador, good to have you. Welcome back to the country.
Thank you very much. Thank you for welcoming me.
Nice to be back.
Yes, of course.
And nice to be back with good news.
Well, yes, absolutely. This is very historical, of course, and we're very pleased. The President's very pleased, and I'm sure everybody in the country is very pleased about this because this is a very important symbol. And it sort of like gives us that renewed kind of friendship that we have with the United States, where we have mutual respect of each other. And the bells are actually a symbol of that one.
I actually wanted to get a little bit of an inside story on this because last I saw you was in Wyoming when there was that ceremony, the turnover ceremony. How did you know? How soon did you find out from then that the Balangiga bells were actually going to be returned to the country?
Well, it was a long process actually that had to take place. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the National Defense Authorization Act, which was it's a law that was passed in 1998, where there was a provision there that will not allow the return of war articles of war, whatever they want to call that, and so that expired in September of 2017. And all of our friends, our American friends, especially the veterans, led by Dennis Wright and Dan McKinnon and Brian Bozell, these were in the forefront of pushing for the return of these bells, and they were right there. And also American businessman Henry Howard, who is also a very close friend of the President, was right there pushing this into to changing that law that will now allow the Secretary of Defense to return those bells. Now, I think we have to go back a little bit. In October of 2016, there was a defense ministers meeting in Clark Air Base where President Duterte met with Secretary Mattis, and that was one of the first points that he told Secretary Mattis at that time, that we would like to see those bells back in the Philippines. And Secretary Mattis very clearly said that we will do everything we can to ensure the return of those bells. So I think, to put it in the right perspective, Secretary Mattis was in the forefront of pushing the return of these bells, and of course President Duterte, who was very much into it. You know, the President is a student of history, and so he sees these as a very important part of our history that we would like to see come to a close.
And he also mentioned it during his State of the Nation address.
Yes, of course.
That was also part of his State of the Nation address. But when you found out about it, what was when did you exactly find out that they were going to be returned? Because there was talk that they were working at it.
Yes.
It could be returned
in the
soon.
provision of that National Defense
Defense.
Appropriations Act, there was a 90-day period. So when that law was passed, Secretary Mattis signed it with the approval, of course, of President Trump, who signed that into a law. So there was a 90-day period. We were waiting for 90 days. So we
From
were,
the expiration, you mean, of September 2017?
no, from the time the law was passed and from the time Secretary Mattis signed that these belts will be returned. So there was a 90-day suspense period, so to speak, because that period will allow the U.S. Congress, if there's anyone there that would want to oppose it or would try to change. But it was an uphill climb already at that time, because I think everybody was up to speed that they did want the return of the bells to happen. So it was that 90 days that we were all anxious a little bit. But finally, in November 9, which was the expiration of that 90-day period,
I see.
We knew then. And so we started the ball rolling, and that the ceremony, which was planned by the Pentagon, happened in Wyoming.
Yeah.
Where we
The one we were able to show that, I think, through your page, your Facebook page, if I'm not mistaken, and it was a big event, of course. The turnover ceremony. The two bells are there in Wyoming. It's the Warren Air Force Base in Wyoming, and you had mentioned during that time that the third one obviously was in South Korea.
That's right.
And prior to that, though, you said something, Ambassador. You said that the two bells will have to undergo some. There was a word you used. It wasn't a repair. Yeah,
Refurbishing.
something like that.
Yeah.
In Philadelphia, before they are going to be shipped to, I think, South Korea or Japan. Tell us more about that.
Well,
To be put in good order,
Yes.
is what you said.
Well, the people who helped in getting these belts, especially the veterans, and the American businessman Henry Howard was the one who suggested that we put the belts into good order. And so there was a one who refurbishes these belts in Philadelphia, a very good one. So he put it into, I wish we had our picture. They just sent the photo to us a couple of days ago. And it looks brand new, but it's actually been, because it was rusty, as you can see.
Over there.
As you can see in Wyoming, they just put it in like a monument type of structure there.
Brick wall, yeah.
Yes, and so there was a lot of rust. So these belts, as promised by Secretary Mattis, will be returned in good order, and they insisted that they bring the belts back themselves. Philippine Airlines offered to bring it back, actually. Jimmy Bautista and Michael Tan had offered if those belts, we can ship them back or we can fly them back to the Philippines. But I think the Pentagon, Secretary Mattis, insisted we took those belts, we will return those belts ourselves.
So tell us now, Ambassador, when exactly is it arriving on December 11? What time? And I understand it will be arriving at the Villamor Air Base.
That's right. Well, it'll be coming in from Okinawa. We're hoping that it'll arrive at anywhere between 10:30 to 11 o'clock, which will allow us or allow the U.S. military aircraft to download or to unload the belts and prepare it for a very solemn ceremony which will take place at the Villamor Air Base. I think it'll be done at the grandstand. And of course, the media is invited, and some of the special people who were responsible for the return of these belts will also be invited to attend that very solemn ceremony. Remember, these belts represent I wouldn't call it a dark history, but a part of history where we Filipinos were fighting for our independence. And so that was a Philippine-American war in 1901, and those belts were taken out of the Philippines 117 years ago. That's a very long time.
Yeah.
And so I think that this is very historical and very important for both countries to put closure to it. But more importantly, I think, is that this is a symbol of the kind of respect, the mutual respect, and for our sovereignty as a nation that is being given to us by the United States.
Ambassador, who will be in attendance on December 11? Will the President be there?
Well, the president is invited, and he has indicated that he may want to be there. So we're hoping that he will attend that ceremony. But Assistant Secretary Joseph Felter from the Defense Department will be arriving with the bells, accompanied by Colonel Leo Limebrith, who is also from the Pentagon, and all of these from the Office of Secretary Mattis.
And then from there, what's going to happen after the ceremony at Villamor Air Base, possibly in the grandstand?
Well, it will probably be a very short one, and then they will, I think Secretary Lorenzana will have it displayed for a couple of days before they bring it to Samar. I know there's been a lot of requests that some of these bells should be left here, and so for people to be able to see it and all. But I think it's only appropriate that these bells be returned to the church where it was taken from. But the public will have a chance to probably see it. I'm sure Secretary Lorenzana is making the arrangements to put it on display for maybe about 2 to 3 days before it'll finally be brought to Samar.
Something that we possibly can see once the bells arrive here, possibly stay here for a couple of days before heading back to where it belongs, in Samar. We'll be taking a short break. This is The Source on CNN Philippines. Coming up, can the Philippines be friends with both the United States and China? Ambassador Babe Romualdez tells us more after the break. You're watching The Source on CNN Philippines. Our guest today, Philippine Ambassador Babe Romualdez, Ambassador to the United States. Babe Romualdez, you know, it was, I think, Secretary Locsin who was asked in the past, when will the president visit the United States? And then Secretary Locsin said, he won't until the Balangiga bells are returned. Do you think the president will now be open to visiting the United States?
Well, I think he is. You know, one thing that the president has always made it clear that whenever he travels, first of all, he doesn't really enjoy traveling. So when he does, he feels that there should be a purpose for it. I mean, a specific purpose, or there is a reason for him to travel. And, you know, going to the United States, and if he's, I mean, it's going to go to Washington, D.C., it's a 21-hour flight. That's on a regular flight, though. But I think that this is a very good reason for him to now go to the United States, because this is a like I said, this is something that that the United States sort of like did what they could to make sure the return. You know, we've been working for this for so many years. I know that it was really, in fact, that's way back in 1957 when Father Horacio de la Costa, a Jesuit priest who was the one who discovered this, that these bells were in existence, and it was actually in the United States. And you know, in Hawaiian Air Force Base, it was just in a basement somewhere, and they were going to destroy the building when they said that these bells are significant, historic. So that's the only time. I think in the 1960s when they finally put it up as a monument. So it's been a long time. And of course, I'm Ambassador Raul Rabe, who was our ambassador to the United States in the early 90s, or during the time of President Ramos, was also pushing for the return of the bells. So it's really important to note that the United States, while there was a lot of resistance from the people in Wyoming specifically, and some of the veterans who were there, they did push this to be returned. So I think the president realizes that this is a very good gesture on the part of the United States, and I'm sure that he will take that into account, that going to the United States at this time would be appropriate.
Did you speak to the president recently, and did he intimate anything about it?
Well, he did say that if he goes, he just said that he doesn't like the cold. So hopefully that's a hint that he will go to the United States when it's summertime.
Summer. So it's not going to happen anytime soon?
No, I don't think so.
It's Christmas season.
There's also a lot of travel plans. I'm sure that there's a lot of activities. He's been invited to other places.
Ambassador, how pleased is the president with this development?
Well, like I said, the president is a student of history. He really looks back into a lot of things, into the history, especially in cases like this. And to him, these bells are very significant in the sense that it represents that time in our history with the United States, you know, that we were at war with them. And you have to remember that many countries were at war with each other. There was the American-British War where they even burned the White House. But they're now one of the closest allies. So this is the same thing with these belts. We were close allies, and so why keep the belts? And there's a lot of move all over the world right now. In fact, I think French President Macron is working on returning some of the artifacts that were taken from Africa.
Right. Yes.
And Chancellor Merkel.
With a lot of also protests and opposition.
Well, but this is the right thing to do.
Yeah.
This is the operative word is the right thing to do. And I think the same thing is happening in Germany. They're planning to return many of those that were taken away during the Third Reich to France. All of this is, and this is to keep the peace, so to speak. You know.
So here's where I want to take this now. How can this improve the relations between the Philippines and the United States? I know this is an act of, goodwill, some way of, returning what is supposed to be ours. Many presidents have asked this in the past, and then now you have President Duterte successful in having the bells returned. What is the net effect of this on our relations with the U.S.?
Let's go back first to what the president's always wanted, that he would like to see all countries, especially the United States, who's a close ally of ours, to have mutual respect and respect our sovereignty. So these bells represent that. This is a gesture coming from the United States to say that we respect your sovereignty and we respect your country. And I think that this is also born out of the fact that President Trump is also responsible for this, because he believes that all countries have to take care of themselves. They have to have, they're a sovereign country. They have to decide on what they want to do with the relationships with many other countries, like China, of course.
And it was Ambassador Kim who actually said that it's okay. He said during there was an interview wherein he was saying that it's really okay for the Philippines to be friends with China, because nothing can ever replace the alliance the Philippines has with the United States.
Well, I would agree with Ambassador Kim. Of course, the relationship between the Philippines and the United States is so deep. There are 4 million Filipino Americans living in the United States, and I've said this on many occasions, that every time I visit a place or I visit to see a U.S. congressman or a U.S. senator, invariably we talk about the Filipino Americans in their community, and they're very proud and they like the Filipino Americans who are there. In fact, President George H.W. Bush, who passed away recently, was taken care of by a Filipina nurse. I mean, what more can we say? That we have so many of our Filipinos that are working in the United States and live there, and they have such a good image.
But are there any projects in the works coming from the United States? Marawi, I know there's continuing rehabilitation and help coming from the United States, but are there programs in the pipeline?
Yes, actually, they just passed what they call the Build Act. This is an initiative taken by the U.S. Congress to have a fund available for helping countries, specifically in the ASEAN region, to in their infrastructure program. In fact, Secretary Dominguez is planning to go to the United States sometime in April, at the same time of the IMF World Bank meeting in Washington, D.C. But we're hoping to bring Secretary Dominguez and some of the other economic managers all over the U.S. To do some like a road show on our infrastructure program. So this is going to be very significant again, that we have this kind of new initiative taken by the United States.
Yeah, because this is new. You were saying a while ago the Build Act. It's obviously a fund for infrastructure projects, but don't you think we need to hurry?
Well,
with so much, these promises right now coming from China on infrastructure, everything, bridges.
Well, I think we welcome all of these offers coming from many countries, but at the end of the day, really, it's those countries that so to speak, put their money where their mouth is. And I think Japan is one that has already shown significant kind of assistance. Like the subway that we're going to have in Metro Manila is soon going to be inaugurated or started. And I think that will really reverberate very strongly with many of the people who live here in Metro Manila, including myself.
Yeah, for sure.
It'll take me less than an hour to get here on CNN.
Yeah, that's true, sir. You know what's also important here is, of course, the details. There can be a lot of promises of billions of dollars of trade and investment promises, ODA, etc., sir. But as they say, the devil is in the detail. So if there is going to be a fund for infrastructure for ASEAN countries, sir, it would be also nice to find out the details of what can be offered. Because I think what's happening to China is we forward a proposal to the Chinese businessmen, and then they look at it, and then they study it, and then they get their own people, the contractors, and then it goes back to us. So I wonder what kind of deals can be made with the United States.
Well, I'm not going to be able to specifically say what kind of a deal that we're going to have with the United States. But one thing for sure is this BUILD Act that's coming from the United States is a funding. They're putting up billions of dollars to be able to help countries build their infrastructure, specifically even into the technology part, where the United States obviously has a is very strong in technology for airports and for many of our infrastructure that will require something like that. So I think that we really would rather not compare it to what the China is offering, but I think it's more like specifically what are the things that this BUILD Act will be able to do.
Offer.
Yes, and the offer that it has.
Philippine Ambassador to the United States, Manuel Romualdez. Sir, pleasure to have you. And you will be flying back after the Balangiga bells are returned to Samar?
I guess so. That's what we are. We have to go back to work.
Merry Christmas to you, sir,
well,
in
thank
advance.
You very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much
Thank
for
you so
having me.
much.
Thank you.
This is The Source on CNN Philippines. Coming up, a heartwarming tribute of a son to his father through a Christmas tree. That's for today's In Focus.